The views expressed on the Jerry Cahill CF podcast are that of Jerry Cahill and guests, and not necessarily those of the Boomer Esiason Foundation. Nothing on the Jerry Cahill CF podcast should be considered medical advice. Such advice can only be given by a physician who is experienced with cystic fibrosis. The Boomer Esiason Foundation, Jerry Cahill and guests cannot be held responsible for any damage which may result from using the information on this podcast without the permission of your medical doctor. You're listening to the Jerry Cahill CF podcast presented by the Boomer Esiason Foundation and jerrycahill.com.
Welcome to Jerry Cahill's Living, Breathing, Succeeding podcast series. This show, the ups and downs in life post-double lung transplant with cystic fibrosis, has been made possible with financial support from Mylan. Today you'll meet Chris Raiano from Yorktown, New York, diagnosed with CF at 2 years of age. Chris is 31 years old, received a double lung transplant 2 years ago on January 9th, 2018 at New York Presbyterian. Chris was very active growing up, playing baseball and basketball, and did not let cystic fibrosis get in his way from leading a normal life. Chris graduated from Raiano College and remains active post-transplant. Chris married the love of his life, Kylie, in October 2017. Kylie, who took over as his caregiver, was by his side every step of the way, and 3 months after they got married, Chris received his double lung transplant.
Hi, my name is Chris Raiano. I'm 31 years old. I live in Yorktown Heights, New York. I have cystic fibrosis. I was diagnosed at 2 years old, and I am 2 years post double lung transplant. I also have a sister with cystic fibrosis, and 2 years ago I got married to my wife, Kylie.
I'm Kylie Raiano. I'm 31 years old. I grew up here in Westchester, Mohegan Lake. Once we started talking in 2014, we were probably inseparable since then.
My wife, Kylie, is a very strong person, and she accepted CF from day one. She never had any reservations about it. She's always there to help me, making appointments, going to appointments. I don't believe she sees me as a burden. She does a wonderful job taking care of me.
Once I found out the life expectancy of someone with cystic fibrosis, it didn't really bother me. I've known people that have had illnesses in the past before that have been in my life for, several years, and then all of a sudden they're gone. As long as I made the time with them the most important thing, that's all that mattered to me.
10 years before transplant, when my lung function was around 40%, my doctor suggested that I go get tested for the transplant program just so everything is in place in case something rapidly declined. The reason I decided that I had to be actively listed for transplant was because I couldn't do any of my normal routines anymore without struggling. I was coughing all the time, out of breath. I couldn't even take a shower by myself, get dressed. Everything knocked me out. I had no quality of life left.
I found out that Chris would need a transplant before we got married. I actually went with him to one or two meetings with the surgeon. That was something that I really wanted to learn more about, and he was very willing and open to having me go with him and meet him and ask questions. So I think going forward for anybody going through that process, it's good to be, there for them as support and ask questions if they, are afraid to ask something, or just to be a shoulder, someone to lean on.
I always thought about if the roles were reversed, how I would handle someone telling me that they had chronic illness and eventually would need a life-saving transplant. And I give a lot of credit to Kylie that she never wavered, never questioned, went along with it, did research, did anything she can to help me, and it's all out of love, and I appreciate it very much.
Someone with cystic fibrosis, knowing that they live such a short life before transplant, it's something that wouldn't change my opinion about loving Chris. I love Chris no matter what. And time is just time, as long as I get to spend as much time with him as I can and, be with him, that's all that matters to me. I wouldn't change it for anything. Someone that is perfectly normal or healthy could die tomorrow, and we couldn't change that, and I wouldn't change being with Chris. I wouldn't consider it a burden being with him, and I would be with him no matter what. I wouldn't I couldn't. I loved him too much just to walk away from him. I know it was scary for him, it was scary for his family, scary for me, but I would not change anything. I would never walk away from him, ever. If this was to happen to him again, I would do it 100 times.
It was definitely difficult on the emotional side of it. I did just get married 3 months before, and thinking about getting transplant, I felt like it was going to be a burden on everyone. They would have to take care of me, and I just got married. It should be a happy time in my life, and it was a very emotional time and full of hard decisions to make. The scariest part of the transplant process was that I wasn't going to make it to transplant. Right before transplant, I was in very bad shape, and every day I was getting more and more worried that I wasn't going to make it to the operating room. I think having a good support system is one of the most important things going into transplant. I had my mom, dad, and my wife Kylie, who was amazing. They were by me every step of the way. I wasn't in the hospital one day without them, not 1 minute without them. They were always there, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without them. The only part of the transplant process I do regret is waiting too long to be actively listed on the transplant list. I would give advice to anyone that's on the list, get it done sooner rather than later, because the healthier you go into it, the healthier you're going to come out.
It's definitely a scary world out there for someone going through what Chris has gone through. Germ-wise, I don't know if he's as scared as out there as I am for him. I wish, more people were more cautious, especially for people like Chris, because any little thing could cause Chris to be sick again, back in the hospital, and I don't want that. He's been such a happy person, and he's had a whole nother life granted to him, so I don't want to see that again.
After transplant, I could do a ton more than I could do before transplant. I could do whatever I want. I could walk for miles without stopping. I could run. I love bowling. Bowling is 100 times easier now than it was before transplant.
Post-transplant, his routine has been cut in half dramatically. He doesn't have to do his vest anymore. He doesn't have to do a nebulizer anymore. The medication is easy. If it's not him filling the trays, I fill the trays. As long as he's healthy, it's no burden. I would do it 100 times for him, over and over.
Starting a family was always something me and Kylie have talked about. We knew it was going to be not conventional to start a family, as with CF, it is very hard for a male to have a child.
If it was for me to choose between us having a child and Chris having another transplant, or Chris can't have children because of having another transplant, I would choose Chris to have another transplant. I would want him with me for the rest of my life if I could have him. I know people who have had transplant have had families and are doing great. I'm sure there's hiccups along the road, but we've encountered hiccups now, and we've gotten over them, and I hope to continue a life with Chris, healthy, happy, and with children.
I would want to say to my donor, thank you, first of all, and that I'm extremely grateful for their kindness and for giving me a second chance of life, and that I'll try to make them as proud as I could by living every day to the fullest.
If Chris's donor was here today, or the family, I would just be so grateful and apologetic, because I know if that was someone I loved, or a loved one, it would be a very hard thing to go through, seeing someone you love not there the next day, but alive in someone else. Having you go through something like this at such a young age, I know it's difficult, and I know I'm not always, the most sane person sometimes. I'm more crazy about your health than I think anybody. But I do it because I love you, and I want you here, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you.
I love you, Kylie, and I appreciate everything you've done for me. If it wasn't for you, I probably wouldn't be here. and you push me every day to stay healthy and do what I have to do and remind me that I'm lucky to be here and that I had a second chance of life and I'm trying to do everything I can to stay around for you.